I'm going to read a chapter from my novel that is towards the end of the novel, so I need to give you a little bit of context. There are two sisters, Mariana and Luisa. There's a girlfriend. They all live in Mexico in 3 or 4 decades ago, more or less. The girlfriend is Fernanda, and she hails from the Comcat indigenous community in Sonora. And she has a professional and spiritual commitment to protecting sea turtles, especially the leatherback, which is the most endangered species. Okay. Come in, Lisa whispered. Fernanda nodded and said nothing. Lisa closed the door inaudibly. She asked Fernanda to take off her shoes and follow her, leaving the roofed area of the house for the rain-battered garden. They walked the tile paths surrounded by large planters and fruit trees. The moonless, stormy night was so dark that Fernanda had to hold on to Lisa's arm to avoid tripping on a root or a plant. At one point, Fernanda grazed a branch and made it spring back, shaking the weight of accumulated water in a rushing cascade that soaked the two noisily. At the courtyard's opposite end, they reached the corridor leading to the bedrooms. In entering the roofed area, Fernanda and Luisa toweled their hair, arms, and shoulders. Walking from the back of the house towards the front, they passed a sewing room, a linen closet, Luisa's room, and the bathroom she shared with her sister, Mariana, before they reached Mariana's room next to their mother's. All this just to avoid passing by the mother's door. At her sister's room, Luisa turned towards Fernanda. Even a few hours ago, she would have scoffed at the idea of welcoming her in Mariana's room in the middle of the night. And now it was she who had asked her to come. The light-hearted relationship the siblings had developed with Fernanda was cemented on their common concern for the beaches and the sea turtles. But then, when had it all changed? Luisa had nothing but love for her sister, but she would never have imagined that just from spending time with the likes of Fernanda, Mariana would turn into one of them. Tortillera. She checked a vague disgust. She told herself, Mariana es tortillera. Why did people call them tortilla makers? And how could she discuss this with her sister? God knows she had tried. But Mariana had cut her off. She had implied that Luisa was jealous. Jealous? And was she not in the right? Did not Mariana get all that was good in life, admiration and love and leniency? Did she not get to travel and study? Did Mariana not get to break all the rules while everybody else drooled over her face and her blonde hair? And now she had decided she would fall in love with an Indian and a woman? Next to her, Fernanda watched and waited. Without a word, Luisa turned around, opened the door, and took a step into the room. In the dim light, Luisa looked at Mariana lying in her bed. The sheets were tangled and moist. Her hair was matted. She was naked, terribly vulnerable. She could die, Luisa thought. She just fell asleep, she said, as she walked towards the bed. She was awake when I went to let you in. She'll probably wake up again soon. She's been in and out of a delirium. Touch her. On Mariana's pink cheek, Fernanda's hand looked black. You think it's what, 103? 104? Fernanda asked, the concern in her eyes mirroring Luisa's. Mariana's head swayed gently. A hum issued from her throat. She took 2 aspirin about 2 hours ago, said Luisa. No effect for an hour. Then she threw up, bile and pills. The pills were whole. She had thrown up at Menard's, and she retched again here. The fever increased and the delirium started. She soaked through her bedclothes and then through her nightgown. I couldn't dress her again. About an hour ago, she got up. I had to restrain her from sleepwalking. I could hardly hold on to her. That's when I called you. It was the right thing to do, Luisa, Fernanda said gently. Thanks. Luisa nodded. She was grateful, too, not to be alone with yet another crisis. The wall towering between her and Fernanda seemed to crack. Mariana's humming grew louder. Ijapa, illa, ijapa, Luisa heard. Some nonsensical rhyme Mariana had been singing obsessively for the past days. Fernanda smiled sweetly at Mariana, then up at Luisa. It's the serenade for sacred Moose Nipple, my companion, you know, the leatherback turtle. Luisa looked at her silently. Flustered, Fernanda abandoned the intimate tone. Does that fan have a higher setting? She asked as she uncovered Mariana's feet and shoulders. careful not to bare her private parts. Luisa aimed at the fan at Mariana. Then she left the room and came back with a basin of cool water and some clean cloths. Fernanda sat in a chair at the bedside, holding a soaked handkerchief over Mariana and dripping water on her lips. Mariana's tongue darted and licked. Sitting cross-legged on the center of a large bed, Luisa stroked Mariana's neck and arms with a wet towel. After a while, Mariana began to cool off. Luisa was so drowsy, she could have simply lain down beside her. Luisa, Fernanda said, and startled her. Let me understand. The food at Menard's party made her ill? What did they feed you? She picked up strands of Mariana's hair from her wet temples and pushed them away. Guess? Luisa gazed into Fernanda's eyes. Really, you should be able to. I heard it was pozole. Doesn't Mariana like it? When it's made with pork? Are we talking food poisoning? But then how is it you're fine? Didn't you eat the same food? Was anyone else sickened? Luisa shook her head, then looked away. Fernanda reached across Mariana. She took Luisa's chin. Gently but firmly, she made her look in her eyes. What was wrong with the food? What did they do to Mariana? Fernanda would not let her forget. Luisa had sat at the table of honor in the garden of Chepo Menard's house for her father's memorial dinner. Her mother sat on her right and Mariana on her left. Their nanny, Amalia, next to Mariana. Chepo's garden was ostentatious, tasteless. The requisite Greek goddess sculptures in white marble were reminiscent of the bust Menard had dedicated her father. Under a tent large enough to shelter some 100 guests were round tables dressed with starched tablecloths and crowned with orchid centerpieces. The guests sat and smiled, bejeweled, wrapped in silk. They were disgusted with Luisa's and Mariana's attempts to save the beaches and the turtles, but apparently not with enjoying a party. Of course, Luisa could not know how many of them were merely concealing their hostility until they could determine how to manipulate her and her sister. The menu was simple but abundant. First came bowls of pozole, the spicy broth soaking the hominy and pork cubes. Each guest was presented with a dainty plate of garnishes, a mound of shredded purple and green cabbage, pickled onions, cilantro, a crimson pepper sauce, silky arches of avocado. Luisa's mother chatted with Menard and ate heartily, her cheer reassuring Luisa. Mariana, Luisa, and Amalia did as well as they could. They acknowledged Menard with smiles and nods. They commented on his kind memory of Remigio's favorite soup. Menard prodded them along. Eat more. What would your father say? Aren't you famously against waste? He baited them. He stank. Luisa noticed that her nanny was upset. Amalia stared at her soup, tasted it with caution, put her spoon down, and looked at Menard with an expression Luisa could not have described. Sorrow? Disgust? Mariana barely nibbled on the meat. She added a lot of pepper sauce as if to mask the flavor. Luisa too felt that the meat was odd, leaner, more muscular than any pork she ever ate. It was gamey and fishy. It fell heavily in her stomach. After the pozole came the second course, huachinango zarandeado. Each table was served by a waiter carrying on a silver platter a red snapper open like a butterfly, strewn with spices and grilled. The waiters prepared dainty tacos with handmade tortillas, cooked on wood grills on a far corner of the tent. As they dispensed the food, Menard wandered towards one of the ladies clapping the dough into discs. Ah, las tortilleras, he hollered. He picked up a steaming tortilla from the griddle, rolled it up with sea salt, and put half into his mouth. What will we do without them? I don't know if they sleep with boys or girls. He looked over at Mariana. Some people chuckled. And I don't care. I want what they want. I eat what they eat. I eat there. He smiled malignantly, his mouth full of the white corn. They're delicious tortillas. Vivan las tortilleras. The crowd's chuckles turned into nervous laughter. Luisa was too mortified to look at her sister. Next to her, her mother appeared oblivious to Menard's insults. With the second course, Mariana, Luisa, and Amalia laid their utensils across their plates and sat with their hands on their laps. When dessert and cordials appeared, Menard came back and sat with them. The worst was still to come. Chepo closed the dinner with a last toast. It had been a wonderful dinner, he said, in spite of a little mistake. I apologize for not having offered menu cards at the beginning of the dinner. Please forgive a little blunder in what I hope you will remember a special and symbolic event." At these words, the waiters placed the menu cards in front of each guest. They carried flashlights in case the semi-darkness hindered the guests' reading. With a flourish, one of the solicitous waiters showed Luisa the menu. She shut her eyes so tightly it hurt her temples. She now sat on her sister's bed, but saw in her mind the perfidious card. "What did you eat?" Fernanda demanded. The soup was made with leatherback turtle meats. Fernanda's hand covered Luisa's mouth. "We did not know until they cleared the plates," Luisa said through from Fernanda's fingers and her own tears. She saw in her mind the dinner table, the notice of the crime crumpled on her dessert plate, a crimson stain on her white napkin, a reminder of her share in the carnage. The card read, "Delicioso pozole de tortuga laúd. The Comcac people of Sonora call this delicacy musmipol, the fragile one." No one said a word. What could one say to such cruelty? Fernanda batted at her throat to push away something tickling her. Her hand was wet. The two continued caring for the dear, ill woman. So much sorrow, so much contempt. To counter it, they had only kindness. They sat on the bed, each on one side of Mariana. At a certain point, Luisa's head fell on her chest. "Why don't you lie down?" Fernanda asked. "Her fever is practically gone." Luisa touched her sister. "It feels a lot cooler. You should sleep too." "And tomorrow?" "Don't worry about Madre. We'll get you out of here. Lie down," Luisa said as she shifted her position. But there was little space for three, with Mariana outstretched on the bed like a sea star. Fernanda shook her head and stood up. "I should get going." Luisa sat up. "No, Fernanda, please stay. Mariana needs you. I need you to help me." She reached and held her hand. "Okay, Musmi. Why don't you go to your room and rest? I'll stay with her." Fernanda knew what she risked, that Luisa would throw her out for pushing her perversions on her sister. She went over the story Luisa had just told her, the word tortillera thrown as an insult, scores of relations deriding women who loved other women, warning Mariana, and then Luisa warning her. But Fernanda had begun something and had to finish it. "I'll watch her. I'll call you if things worsen." She looked up for Luisa's reaction. She looked away. "I think I'll take you up on that." That simply. Luisa stood up, stretched her limbs. Fernanda followed her to the door. Luisa turned around and hugged her. "Thanks for being with my sister," she said. She kissed Fernanda's cheek. She closed the door behind her. Fernanda looked back. She reached the bed. Gingerly, she pulled the sheet away from Mariana. She looked, just looked. It was the same gorgeous body she had once pulled from the ocean at Boca de Cachorras. Nothing new. In her daydreams, she had seen and seen again that image, felt that softness. She had memorized every nook and shadow of the sweet skin. She could probably say how many freckles were on her shoulders. Fernanda took her clothes off and folded them on an chair's armrest. She climbed on the bed. She billowed the sheet above Mariana. Catching the fan's breeze, the sheet fell slowly like an egret's wing. Mariana smiled faintly, perhaps enjoying the coolness. Fernanda closed her eyes as she received the sheet on her side. Mariana was so close that her breath tickled her shoulder. Many times during that sweet night, Fernanda opened her eyes and checked on Mariana. Each time she found her cool, in peaceful slumber. Once, as the church bells rang, Mariana stirred. She looked at Fernanda. In her eyes was no delirium, no fear, no sorrow, only joyous recognition. They held each other. They returned to sleep. Thank you.